My brother called me too ugly for his wedding, so I moved out on his big day. The knife slipped right through the ripe tomato, juice splattering across my scarred cutting board. The kitchen at Cooper's Hearth was humming with its usual pre-dinner energy line cooks, calling orders, servers bustling through the swinging doors, the hiss of the grill like a steady heartbeat. I'd been standing in this kitchen for 17 years, since I was 19 and desperate to feed myself and my little brother after our parents died. Chef, Marco called over his shoulder, the Peterson table is asking for you again. I wiped my hands on my apron. Tell them I'll be out in 5. The dining room was packed for a Tuesday, every table filled, the warm amber lighting catching on wine glasses, the low murmur of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. The Peterson family had been regulars since I opened, watching me grow from an amateur cook slinging burgers to a respected chef owner with a restaurant featured in 3 regional magazines. I approached their table, smile in place. How's everything tonight? Macy, Mrs. Peterson beamed. The salmon is divine. Is that a new sauce? Before I could answer, the bell above the door chimed. My brother Joe walked in, his arm wrapped around his fiancée Carla's waist. Her stiletto heels clicked against the hardwood floors, like tiny hammers driving nails into my skull. Joe, 8 years younger and dressed in a suit that cost more than my first car, spotted me and waved. I excused myself from the Petersons and met them at the hostess stand. Hey, sis, he said, throwing one arm around me in a half hug that barely made contact. Got a table for your favorite brother? Only if he has a reservation. I teased, even though I always kept a corner table open for family. Carla's smile didn't reach her eyes. She gave me a once-over, her gaze lingering on my chef's coat with the small tomato stain, my practical clogs, the faint burn scar on my forearm. I saw what she was cataloging, the lines around my eyes from years of early mornings, the calluses on my hands, the gray strand at my temple I'd been too busy to color. Let me show you to your table, I said, grabbing 2 menus. After seating them, I headed back to the kitchen, but Joe caught my arm. Mace, we actually came to talk to you about something. Wedding stuff. Can you join us for a minute? I nodded to my sous chef that I'd be a moment longer and took a seat across from them. Joe drummed his fingers on the table while Carla meticulously arranged her silverware. So, Joe finally said, we've been finalizing the guest list and, well, there's been a slight change of plans. Carla jumped in, her voice honey-sweet with poison underneath. We've decided to go in a more curated direction with the wedding party aesthetics. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning, well, Joe looked uncomfortable. The photographer suggested we aim for a certain look, and Carla's family is very image-conscious with all their connections. The photos will be in several society pages. And what Joe's trying to say? Carla interrupted, her French manicured nails tapping impatiently. Is that we think it would be better if you attended as a regular guest, rather than being in the wedding party. The bridesmaids' dresses are very revealing, and we need a certain uniformity. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. I see. Joe wouldn't meet my eyes. It's just that you've been working so hard for so many years. You look tired. Mace, we're thinking of you. Really, those dresses are unforgiving, and the photos last forever. Carla nodded, her diamond earrings catching the light. Exactly, you've dedicated your life to raising Joe and building this quaint little restaurant. You haven't had time to take care of yourself like other women your age. My mouth went dry. Other women, my age. You know, Carla gestured vaguely at me. Facials, fitness, proper skincare. You just look a bit worn. The words hit like slaps. I had just turned 36. But at that moment, I felt ancient. We still want you at the wedding, of course, Joe added quickly. Just not standing up there with everyone else. You understand, right? Before I could answer, Carla's phone dinged. She glanced down. That's your sister, she told Joe. She's finished her dress fitting and wants to meet for drinks. She looked at me with false sympathy. We should go. I'm sure you have cooking to do. They stood, Joe dropping a kiss on my cheek. Thanks for understanding. Mace, you're the best. I sat there long after they left, the restaurant noise fading to a distant buzz. Too ugly for my brother's wedding, too worn, too tired. The woman who had given up everything so Joe could have a life was now an embarrassment to him. Chef, Marco's voice pulled me back. The Peterson table wanted to know if everything's okay. I nodded, standing on legs that felt suddenly old. Everything's fine, I lied. Just family stuff. As I walked back to the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the decorative mirror by the bar. For the first time in years, I really looked at myself, not just a quick check for food stains or hair out of place, but a true assessment of the woman staring back. And I wondered when exactly I had disappeared. Betty. I was 19 when the police came to our door with news about the car accident. One minute I was a college sophomore worrying about my psychology midterm, and the next I was the legal guardian of my 11-year-old brother. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles, relatives whispering about what would happen to Joe. I'll take him, Aunt Deborah said, eyeing our parents' house appraisingly. The boy can come live with us in Phoenix. I'm staying with Macy, Joe had insisted, his small hand gripping mine. We're staying in our house. I remember the look Aunt Deborah gave me, a mixture of pity and calculation. And how exactly will you manage that? Dear, you're barely an adult yourself. The answer was simple. I'd do whatever it took. I dropped out of college the next week, found 2 jobs waitressing at a diner during the day and bartending at night, learned to write checks for the mortgage, to help Joe with homework I barely remembered, to soothe nightmares I was having myself. The inheritance from our parents wasn't substantial, but it was enough to keep the house for a few years if we were careful. When Joe reached high school and wanted to join the basketball team, I picked up catering gigs on weekends to pay for his shoes and gear. When he was accepted to state with a partial scholarship, I took out a small business loan and opened Cooper's Hearth in the defunct bakery downtown, gambling everything that my self-taught cooking skills could keep us afloat. The early days of the restaurant were brutal. I'd work until 2 a.m., sleep for 4 hours, then get up to make Joe breakfast before his classes. There were months when I paid his tuition but skipped meals myself. Nights I spent calculating and recalculating numbers until my vision blurred. But we made it. Joe graduated with a business degree, landed an entry-level job at Prestige Properties, and worked his way up to becoming one of their top-selling agents. Cooper's Hearth survived its shaky beginnings and evolved from a simple sandwich shop to a respected local restaurant. I dated occasionally. There was Michael from the farmer's market, who brought me heirloom tomatoes and took me to 3 dinners before I canceled on him too many times. Then Sam, the English professor who left sweet notes with proper grammar but couldn't understand why I checked my phone constantly during our dates in case Joe called. The last was David, 2 years ago, who proposed after 6 months with a speech about being my partner in all things. I turned him down gently. The restaurant needed me. Joe was just starting at Prestige and often needed advice. There was never enough time. I told myself it was temporary. Once Joe was established, once the restaurant was more stable, I'd focus on my personal life. But years slipped by, and somehow I became the woman in the mirror I barely recognized, hair always in a practical ponytail, clothes chosen for durability rather than style, hands roughened by years of kitchen work. The day after Joe and Carla's visit, I found myself standing in the personal care aisle of the drugstore, bewildered by the array of creams promising to erase years of neglect. A 20-something salesgirl approached, her skin dewy and perfect. Can I help you find something? I gestured helplessly at the shelf. I need something for... I touched my face, the lines around my eyes. She nodded sympathetically. For mature skin. You mean, let me show you our age-defying line. Mature skin. When had that happened? I left with $247 worth of products I didn't know how to use, and a hollow feeling in my chest. That evening, I sat in my small office at the back of the restaurant, scrolling through photos on my phone. There were hundreds of pictures of Joe at his college graduation, Joe winning his first sales award, Joe with Carla at their engagement party, but hardly any of me. I was always behind the camera, always the one documenting his milestones. The next morning, I arrived at the restaurant early to do inventory. As I counted wine bottles in our small cellar, my phone buzzed with a text from Joe. Carla's parents want to host rehearsal dinner at Vine and Oak instead of your place. Hope that's okay. Their treat, better for the aesthetic, apparently. The Vine and Oak was our city's newest upscale restaurant, all glass and steel and $48 entrees. I had been expecting to host Joe's rehearsal dinner since he got engaged, had already planned a menu, ordered special ingredients, arranged for extra staff. I started typing a response about how hurtful this was, how I'd been planning for months, but stopped. What was the point instead? I texted back, whatever works best for you guys. His reply came quickly. Knew you'd understand. Hey, BTW, can I borrow your car Thursday? Taking Carla's parents to look at houses, and my lease is up. I stared at the screen. Joe had been borrowing my car at least twice a month since his BMW lease expired. He made 4 times what I did, but always had a reason why he couldn't afford a new car right now. Just like he always had a reason why he couldn't contribute to the property taxes on our parents' house, where he still lived rent-free. Instead of responding, I pulled up my bank account on my phone. After 17 years of scrimping and saving, of putting every extra dollar back into the restaurant or toward Joe's needs, I had managed to accumulate a decent emergency fund. Not wealth by any means, but security. For the first time, I wondered what it would be like to use that money for myself. That night after closing, I stayed late at the restaurant. Marco found me staring at the wall of photos by the entrance snapshots of regulars, local events, the ribbon cutting when we expanded 5 years ago. Everything okay, chef? He asked, hanging up his apron. Marco, how long have you worked here now? 7 years in August, he said, leaning against the wall. Best job I've ever had. Would you be interested in taking on more responsibility, maybe as a partner? His eyes widened. Are you serious? I mean, yes, absolutely. But why now? I touched a photo of the day we opened, me standing nervous but proud in front of the restored storefront. I think it might be time for a change. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. I consulted with my lawyer and accountant, drafted partnership papers that would give Marco a 30% stake in the restaurant, while I maintained majority ownership. I looked at apartment listings in 3 different neighborhoods, signed a lease on a sunny 1-bedroom in Riverdale Heights, and arranged for movers. Joe barely noticed my distraction. He was busy with wedding preparations and house hunting with Carla. When he did call, it was usually for favors. Could I pick up his tux? Could I drop off some paperwork at his office? Could I make sure the house was clean when Carla's parents visited? One evening, a week before the wedding, he stopped by the restaurant as I was closing up. Hey, Mace, he called, helping himself to a beer from behind the bar. Need a favor. I wiped down the counter. What's up? Carla's cousin Tiffany had a falling out with her boyfriend, so she won't have a +1. We need to adjust the seating chart. I was thinking maybe you could sit at the vendor table instead of the family table. It would really help us out with the numbers. I stopped wiping. The vendor table, Joe took a swig of beer. Yeah, with the photographer and the wedding planner. They're cool people. You'll like them. And this way, Tiffany can sit with the family. The family, I repeated, which I'm a part of. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Come on, Mace, don't make this a thing. It's just seating. And honestly, he leaned in, lowering his voice. The family photos might be better this way too. Carla's mom mentioned that maybe you could, do something with your hair for the wedding. Maybe makeup. She knows a good stylist if you want the number. I set down my cleaning rag very carefully. Let me make sure I understand. I'm not good enough for your wedding party. I'm not good enough to sit with the family. And now you're suggesting I need professional help to even appear in photographs. Joe sighed dramatically. Why are you being so sensitive? It's our special day. We just want everything to be perfect. Perfect, I echoed. The word hung between us like a judgment. Look, he said, finishing his beer and setting the bottle down with a thunk. I know you don't get all this image stuff. You've never cared about appearances. But this is important to Carla and her family. They're connected to a lot of influential people. This wedding could be huge for my career. And what about everything I've done for your career? I asked quietly. Who paid for your degree? Who supported you while you built your client base at Prestige? Who's been letting you live rent-free in a house I maintain? Joe's expression hardened. Oh, here we go. The martyr routine. Yes, Macy, you've been very generous, and I've said thank you a million times. But I didn't ask you to give up your life for me. That was your choice. The words felt like a slap. He was right, of course. It had been my choice. Every sacrifice, every missed opportunity, every lonely night I'd chosen it all, convinced I was doing the right thing for Joe, for us, for the promise I'd made to our parents to take care of him. But I'd never expected gratitude to have such a short shelf life. You're right, I said, surprising us both. It was my choice, and now I'm making a different one. I held out my hand. I need my car keys back. What? Why? Because it's my car, and I'm done lending it to you. He frowned, digging in his pocket for the keys. Is this because of the seating chart you're being ridiculous? I took the keys, the metal warm from being in his pocket. The wedding is on Saturday. I'd like you to move your things out of the house by Friday. Joe's mouth fell open. Excuse me. You heard me? I've signed a lease on a new apartment. I'm moving out. The house is half yours, half mine, according to the will. If you want to stay there, you'll need to buy out my share or start paying rent. My lawyer will be in touch with the details. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. Completely serious. I walked to the door and held it open. Good night, Joe. After he left, still sputtering objections, I locked up and went to the office. On my desk was a printed itinerary for the trip I'd booked the day before, 2 weeks in Italy, starting with a cooking class in Florence on Monday, 2 days after Joe's wedding. For the first time in 17 years, I was putting myself first, and it felt terrifying and right. The day of Joe's wedding dawned sunny and mild, perfect weather for the country club ceremony Carla had been planning for months. I stood in the kitchen of my childhood home, sipping coffee and surveying the living room filled with neatly labeled boxes. The movers would arrive in 2 hours. Joe had been calling and texting nonstop since our confrontation at the restaurant. At first angry, then confused, finally bargaining. He'd offered to let me sit at the family table after all, promised to start paying for the house, even suggested I could be in 1 or 2 photos if it meant that much to me. I hadn't responded. Some insults cut too deep for easy forgiveness. I was loading the last box into my car when he pulled into the driveway. He jumped out, still in his sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly having rushed over from Carla's apartment where he'd been staying. What are you doing? He demanded, staring at the boxes. The wedding is in 5 hours. I'm aware. I closed the trunk. I'm moving to my new place. The movers are coming for the furniture soon. He ran his hands through his hair. Macy, stop. This is insane. If this is about the wedding party thing or the seating chart, I talked to Carla. She said you can sit wherever you want. How generous of her, I said, and the coolness in my voice surprised even me. But this isn't about the wedding. This is about me finally recognizing what our relationship has become. Joe's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, taking my time, that I've spent half my life dedicated to making sure you had every opportunity. I put my dreams aside to raise you. I built a business to support us. I've been your cook, your maid, your chauffeur, your ATM. And somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a person with feelings and started seeing me as a resource. An embarrassing one, at that. That's not fair. Isn't it you and Carla didn't just suggest I step back from the wedding party? You told me I was too ugly to stand beside you, too worn out, too old looking. You asked me to sit with the vendors like I was staff, not family. And when I objected, you made it clear that your image and your career were more important than my feelings. He had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't mean it like that. You did, though. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. This is my wedding gift to you and Carla. It's the deed to this house, signed over to your name alone, and a check covering what would have been my share of the property taxes for the next year. After that, you're on your own. Joe took the envelope, his expression stunned. Macy, no, I don't want the house. I want my sister back. You should have thought of that before you made it clear how little you value me. I walked around to the driver's side of my car. I hope you and Carla will be very happy together. I think she's exactly what you deserve. You're not coming to the wedding, he asked, his voice small. I've been uninvited and reinvited too many times, I said. But truthfully, I have more important things to do today. As I drove away, I caught a final glimpse of him in my rearview mirror, standing in the driveway with the envelope clutched in his hand, looking lost in a way I hadn't seen since he was 11. The movers arrived exactly on time at my new apartment. By late afternoon, my belongings were arranged in the space that was entirely mine. I stood in the center of the living room, savoring the silence. No one calling for dinner, no one asking for money, no one making me feel less than. My phone buzzed continuously, Joe, his groomsmen, even Carla, demanding to know where I was, insisting I was ruining their special day. I turned off the ringer and poured myself a glass of wine. The wedding was scheduled for 5:30. At 5:15, I sat on my new balcony watching the sunset, feeling lighter than I had in years. At 5:45, I drew a bath with the expensive oils I'd bought myself as a housewarming gift. At 6:30, while they were probably saying their vows, I ordered delivery from my favorite Thai restaurant and enjoyed it on my new couch, not checking my phone once. The next morning, I drove to the restaurant earlier than usual. Marco was already there, prepping for Sunday brunch service. How was the wedding? He asked. I wouldn't know. I didn't go. His eyebrows shot up. Chef? That's cold. Maybe, I agreed. But necessary. I handed him a folder. Here's the partnership paperwork, if you're still interested. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, but we can finalize everything when I get back. Marco opened the folder, scanned the first page, and looked up with a stunned expression. You're serious? Very. You'll be handling things while I'm away, so consider it a trial run. I'll have my phone if there's an emergency, but otherwise, the place is yours until I get back. He shook his head in amazement. Where are you going? I smiled. Italy. I've always wanted to learn authentic pasta making techniques. Damn, chef, he said with a grin. Look at you living your best life. And that's exactly what it felt like, the start of my best life. 17 years delayed, but finally beginning. Florence was everything I'd imagined and more. The streets smelled of garlic and fresh bread. The buildings glowed golden in the sunset. And the cooking class I'd signed up for turned out to be taught by a charming older woman named Sophia, who treated ingredients with reverence and students like family. Your hands, she said on the first day, taking mine in hers. They are the hands of a real cook, strong, experienced. She turned them over, examining the small scars, the calluses. These hands have stories, for the first time in years. I felt proud of those marks rather than self-conscious. My phone filled with messages from Joe. I read them occasionally, but didn't respond. Macy, please call me. The wedding was a disaster. Carla's furious that you didn't come. I can't believe you just left like that. What am I supposed to tell people? The caterer overcharged us. Can you look at the invoice? I try to make pasta. The kitchen's a disaster. How do you get sauce stains out of a white shirt? Carla says the house isn't her style. We're looking at places in the Oaks. Can you co-sign a loan? Each message confirmed I'd made the right decision. On my 4th day in Florence, I was sitting at a small cafe when Sophia spotted me and joined my table. Ah, the American chef, she said warmly. Why are you alone again today? A beautiful woman should have company. I laughed. I'm enjoying the solitude. Actually, it's new for me. She studied me over her espresso. You are running from something. Yes, not running, just finally moving forward. Sophia nodded knowingly. A man, my brother. Actually, I raised him after our parents died, and I recently realized I've spent so long being his caretaker that I forgot to have a life of my own. She clicked her tongue sympathetically. And now you are finding yourself. Good. It is never too late to become who you were meant to be. We talked for hours. She told me about her late husband, her 3 children spread across Europe, the cooking school she opened at 50 after years of being just a housewife. I told her about Cooper's hearth, about Joe, about the wedding I didn't attend. You know, she said as we parted. My Thursday night class has an opening. Private instruction, very expensive. Her eyes twinkled. But for you, special price. You have talent. It would be a shame to waste it. I signed up on the spot. The rest of my time in Italy passed in a blur of flavors and experiences. I took Sophia's class, then another. I wandered through markets, tasting olive oils and aged cheeses. I sat in piazzas and sketched the architecture, a hobby I'd abandoned in college. I even let myself be charmed by Antonio, a silver-haired vintner who took me to dinner 3 times and kissed me goodbye at the airport with promises to email his family's secret limoncello recipe. When I returned to Minneapolis, I was surprised by how different everything looked, not because the city had changed, but because I had. Cooper's hearth was thriving under Marco's care. He'd even introduced a new pasta dish inspired by my texts from Italy. The regulars welcomed me back with warmth, many commenting on how rested I looked, how I was glowing. My new apartment felt like home already. I arranged my souvenirs from Italy on shelves, hung a watercolor of the Arno River that I'd purchased from a street artist, and planted herbs on my balcony. Every corner reflected my tastes, my preferences, without compromise. Joe had finally stopped calling and texting daily, but I knew from social media that he and Carla were back from their honeymoon in Bora Bora, 3 weeks after my return. I was shopping at the farmer's market when I spotted him across the square. He looked tired, his normally meticulous appearance slightly rumpled. I could have slipped away unnoticed, but something made me hold my ground. When he saw me, his face went through a range of emotions before settling on cautious hope. "Macy," he said, approaching slowly as if I might bolt. "You're back." "I've been back for a while." He shifted uncomfortably. "That you look different, different, really good, actually." "Thank you." I selected a bunch of basil, inhaling its bright scent. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know," he sighed. "Can we talk? Please, maybe get coffee." I considered him my brother, the boy I'd raised, the man who had hurt me so deeply. I'm not sure what there is to say. "I'm sorry," he blurted out. "I was awful to you. Carla was awful to you. The whole wedding thing was... I got caught up in it all, in trying to impress her family, and I lost sight of what really matters, which is you. Everything you've done for me." His voice cracked. "Mace, the house is a disaster. I can't figure out the bills. The lawn is dying. Carla keeps saying we should just sell it and buy a condo, but I can't. That's our home." "It's your home now," I corrected gently, "and those sound like adult problems you'll need to solve." I know, and I will. I'm trying, but I miss you. Thanksgiving's coming up, and I always loved your turkey. And, Joe," I interrupted, "are you apologizing because you're genuinely sorry, or because your life is harder without me managing it?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, looking stricken. "That's what I thought." I paid for the basil and added it to my market bag. "I'm hosting a small dinner party tonight with friends from the restaurant. I need to finish shopping." "Wait," he said desperately. "Please, just tell me what I can do to fix this." I studied my brother's face, so like our father's, but with none of the maturity or compassion I remembered. "There's nothing to fix, Joe. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just clear, for the first time in a long time. I see our relationship for what it was, and I'm choosing something different for myself now." "So that's it, 17 years of being family, and you're just done?" "We'll always be siblings," I said. "But the relationship we had before, where I give and you take and take, yes, that's done." His face crumpled. "I need you, Macy." "No, you don't. You want the convenience of me, the comfort of knowing someone will always clean up your messes. That's not the same as needing me for who I am." I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. "When you can see the difference, maybe we can start rebuilding something new, something healthier." I left him standing there, his expression lost. It hurt, of course it did. Some part of me would always see the 11-year-old boy who'd clung to my hand at our parents' funeral. But I kept walking, because the 19-year-old girl who'd promised to take care of him was gone now, transformed by time and experience and, finally, self-respect. That evening, As my new friends gathered around my table, laughing and sharing stories over the pasta I'd learned to make in Florence, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Sophia had been right. It was never too late to become who I was meant to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Joe. I understand now. I'm sorry, for real this time. When you're ready, I'd like to get to know the new you. I set the phone aside without responding. Maybe someday I'd be ready to let Joe back into my life in a new way. But tonight was about me, my friends, my food, my choices. And for now, that was more than enough.